Take this cap off, just use a pry bar, pry behind it. Take a 22mm socket, take the lug nuts off. Take the wheel off. Take the cotter pin out, use some side cutters. And slide the pin out. Take this cap off. We're going to remove this nut on the sleeve, use a 15mm socket. Loosen that up. You don't have to take the nut off completely. We're just going to spray this down with some rust penetrant. It's pretty rusty, so let that soak a little bit. Now remove the tie rod nut. Use a 21mm socket. To separate the tie rod from the knuckle, you can use different tools. We're just going to use a hammer and just tap it out because we're replacing it. Now slide the tie rod off. This is reverse thread, so you're going to feel like you're tightening it, so turn it to the right and make sure you count the turns. So this will be 1, this will be 2, and so on. And then we get to the end and there's about 26. So write that number down so that you can put the new one on so it's pretty close when you put it back together. Now remove this nut, or loosen this nut. Use a 15mm socket, loosen it up. We'll take the sleeve off. There is special tools that you could use to take the sleeve off. If you don't have one of those special tools, you can use just some pliers will work. And this is regular thread, so just turn it like you're loosening a bolt or a nut. And do the same, count the turns, so 1, 2, 3, and so on, till we get to 35. Write that number down as well. Take the new sleeve, and this only goes on one way, so you need to find which threads actually go on. That's good. So that's one turn. Count the turns. 2, 3, 34, 35. Before we put the outer tie rod end on, so this doesn't spin, we're just going to snug this up. We'll torque it later. Use a 16mm socket. And just keep it from spinning. That's good. Now we're going to put the outer tie rod end on. Now just make sure you go in reverse direction when you're going on, so it's almost like you're loosening. And count the turns, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 25, 26. Now slide the tie rod end into the knuckle. And put the castle nut on. Now I'm going to torque this nut to 66 foot-pounds. Make sure the hole lines up with the castle nut. If it doesn't line up and you can't get the cotter pin in, then just tighten it a little bit more. Take the new cotter pin and slide it in. Use some side cutters and just bend it, just like that. Trim the excess. Before we tighten this down, just make sure this is in the center and make sure the tie rod looks like it's centered. It's pretty good. And now tighten it. Now I'm going to torque these to 41 foot-pounds. Put the tire back on. lug nuts. Now torque these lug nuts to 148 foot-pounds in a cross pattern to tighten the wheel down evenly. I'm just going to go around again, double check. And put the cap on, line it up, give it a tap. If you have to, use a rubber mallet.